Hello there everyone, welcome back. It is time for match 6 of the championship there. This time around, we're going to have ourselves a bit of a mirror match as I face off against the Chardalon. And without a doubt, as you probably predict as mostly for the game type there, I'm going to go straight for the space station assault. Because in all honesty, it's mainly because I'm just most experienced with it now at this point. Although, there are still a lot of things I could do to prove myself there, like especially with that Orc battle last episode, where I have to learn how to deviate, knock the ships off course a little bit, so that way it can give me so much more time as a result. I seem to be doing well with shielding my ships there, but ultimately I do pick the space station assault, as I guess I am a little bit undecisive on what type of game mode I want to play there. Because really, it ultimately comes down to I don't know what he's feeling anyway, so it seems like the best and safest way to do a space station assault where I don't have to commit as much as I need to, and he has to either be aggressive or try and fight me in a long-range torpedo wars, I guess. Which is a possibility, and considering the huge abundance of fighters and bombers, I may have to consider forfeiting the defender role maybe a tiny bit, because I'm only having like a single dictator as a carrier ship, so eventually the torpedoes are going to break through, I think, especially if they're going to use it on the offensive, whereas normally they've been using it on the defensive there because they have the extra abundance of fighters from the space station itself, so I need to be open to that mindset, I think, especially since I think most opponents aren't really expecting me to go overlords and lots of close range firepower, basically, because it seems like everyone is using carries of some sort. So using them defensively with my formation I have there, with again, I feel the overlords and dictator could be a liability. It's really hard to say because technically, with the space stations to back me up there, I technically got 3 dictators in terms of fighters anyway, so I am okay. I'm on equal terms, at least in that regard. I just don't have extra fighters to ensure torpedoes getting shot down, so this is something I've been thinking about as I was getting prepared for this match here, because it seems like everyone just fields carriers more often than not. Hell, even torpedoes too, so it remains to be seen if I should mix it up a little bit, but we're diving as we are here. There is a little bit of a choke point where I place the majority of my mines with the 2 structures, so while as the deployment suggests is there, it's not really the ideal positioning. It is what I go with here. It at least blocks off the left pathway, the left direct path anyway, and I have a few mines to kind of deter him on the right, just a tiny bit. As the formation he's fielding for this one is of course 2 Widowmakers, as you see there, a Retribution and his 2 Marses. He did not go with Overlords in this sense, as probably made apparent by the lack of torpedoes outside of the Retribution. So, with that, once I figure that out there, at least figure out he's got a battleship if nothing else, I decide to back up and get a more tighter formation there to help kind of keep my fighters at their most effective while being able to screen for the battle station quite well. If worst case, letting my ships take the brunt of the blows if nothing else. And of course, if he were to charge in there with like ram attempt or suicide run, at least as made apparent by the Orks when I fought them last episode, they do make a decent shield. Just knocking them off course isn't going to be as effective because Imperial Navy at least have their high energy turn to help alleviate that. Orks, unfortunately, do not, which it sucks for them. So ramming them off course is actually a very practical idea if I were ever fight Orks again. But this is not the matchup. This is a mirror match, so I have a good idea of what kind of ships he's fielding. I'm pretty certain I know he has the Marses at this point. Well, maybe I don't actually. I just know he does. He probably has Novacans of some kind, if nothing else, because otherwise he would have more torpedoes. He's making it really obvious that he's willing to fire 1 battleship's worth of torpedoes at me, so it's clearly Novacans of some sort there, so I have 5 shield transfers available to help with that regard. So I'm good in that regard, and I have fast pattern shields on all my cruisers, so there is a chance at least that I could completely negate any of the damage, and at least that's on my shields, if he fires them while they're still up. So I am prepared for the Novacans, at least on that front. It's just a matter of being able to mitigate the damage as much as I can. Considering I have more torpedoes than him and his Marses are a little bit out of position to defend his retribution, I'm confident I can at least do a little bit of damage to his fleet. I just have not been paying attention if he's been boosted or not. Yeah, I just saw the visual effects there. He does have the emission dissipator. Not that that really matters that much, I would argue. But it keeps him from getting shot from my lances at least. But with Widowmakers, that doesn't matter. I'm going to reveal in a moment. As I did send bombers to try and deal with the one Widowmaker on top with the Dictator and nearly took it out. It may very well still die to a random lance fire. As Retribution dies on in super aggressively, bombers are on the way, and I do have torpedoes to complement it there. Although I tried timing it to have the torpedoes soak the point defense, but I did not account for the extra speed, which kind of throws them way off course there. Even though I do get a couple torpedo hits, I get a fire on the Retribution. I of course have tons of bombers left to throw at this thing. If I can at least stall his assault, I can throw 6 more bombers on that Retribution, and it's going to hurt, especially as it gets lower in health. And here comes the first of the Nova cannons. Easy enough to deal with. I do boost on forward to no effect. One of them, I believe, the Frost Pattern Shields actually negates the damage, so it does pay off a little bit there, and he micro warp jumps in really aggressively. I don't have a clue where he's going there, so I try to prepare at least the Cobras to deploy, and it actually does pay off a little bit, as if you pay attention, he auto-casts the boarding attempts on the Cobras, and he wastes his entire macro round, so even if those Cobras did absolutely nothing, they actually did stall for a good 15 seconds, and 90 seconds because they canceled out a board attempt that he could have done. So I would argue those were damn valuable Cobras, even if they did absolutely no damage. He does continue with his assault. He tries to continue to keep the shields knocked down, but right now, this Retribution is so isolated, it's already below half health. I have torpedoes ready to fire on it whenever I can get a window to keep peppering it. And his Marses are practically useless until he can get a better firing arc, because I have an Overlord to block for his bombers. He has no energy spurs, because I don't think you're even allowed to enhance your ramming damage with the Marses, and the Retribution dies without really contributing anything. Although, with that said, I did take a lot of damage on one of my Dictators, or at least the Dictator. I thought it was an Overlord at first, till I checked it. But try as he might with the Nova cannons, that does very little damage. He does bring down the shields again, but at this point, the Marses are not very formidable at raw fire damage. Firepower rather. They're more about the bombers and their Nova cannon potentially doing damage, so it's just a matter of mitigating what damage he attempts to do, as he's really committed to the suicide attempt now. He's literally ramming with his Marses there, since his options are kind of far and few. So I just have myself a field day. Torpedoes are hitting, Marses are ramming, and this battle station survives without even half its health being brought down. So I think that was a pretty impeccable defense. Maybe I got a little bit lucky with the Cobras, with their placement, but to be fair, I did place one on the bottom as well, which still would have absorbed maybe a boarding attempt, possibly, and a couple of macro batteries, so that absorbed a lot of damage, especially if he had armor-piercing rounds on the Retribution, which I never did bother to check. I did not check, so that would have done a world of hurt there if you got a full salvo off, so delaying that even 12 seconds, a full extra round, is quite noticeable. So, first victory. It felt pretty flawless there. Don't know how I could have optimized it a little bit better, aside from maybe being more efficient with the shield transfers, considering he had, the energy disruption to bring those shields back down instantly. I probably could have been a little more efficient with that, but I did the main thing, I did the most important thing. I managed to deny the Retribution its maximum firepower, and I denied the first Nova Cannon assault, which could have done a whopping 200 damage immediately to the hull. So that was the most important thing. Being consistent with that would have been so much more better though, of course. So, I got rid of his heavy hitters, which probably may not say much there because it doesn't really give me a sense of what he's fielding, because the Marses probably don't synergize the best with the Retribution to begin with there. It works well for a space station assault, perhaps, because of the Novacan's ability to just ignore armor altogether, but thankfully I was prepared for that. I was equipped for such an occasion. So I decided to bring my brute force fleet here, and I suspect he's going to be bringing his cruisers, but I have no idea what kind of cruisers he's going to field. I haven't really put the pieces together. I don't think that he's going to be going a bunch of dictators or carrier ships, which is what he fields. He brings all his dictators out, and a Dauntless, I believe, for his fleet. So this will be a bit of a learning experience for me, because I'm trying to decipher and understand how to counter his fleet design. That's my thought process going in here. I'm trying to learn what I can with my limited experience of the rank mode in general, and apparently, as I pointed out so early on, everyone's commitment to torpedoes and fighter bombers. That is what the real moral of the story is going to be for this match, is trying to figure out and understand the limitations of those ships, because in all honesty, torpedoes and bombers are in some situations could be considered the weakest weapons in the game. And the reason I say that is because you're leaving it to your opponent to be able to mitigate and manage how effective those attacks are. Because after all, the fighter bombers can be destroyed, especially if I have a really tight formation. And torpedoes, as I've been trying to get used to against Orks in the previous matches, I could just mitigate the damage so well. And as I said before, he fielded 3 dictators, and he's not hesitating to show them off. It's not really hard to predict what type of ships those are, because I already destroyed his 2 Marses, so it's definitely not them. As he sets his sights towards the Retribution, he's already got the crisscross torpedo formation, so this is the first thing I'm going to have to get used to, is even though they're much more narrower, a lot easier to dodge, rather, it's still going to be painful if I take them head on, though. That's something this is the first thing I'm going to have to learn in this matchup regard. Because he's going to stop my torpedoes so much more easier as I actually try to shoot over at the Dauntless a little bit. I don't know if that was my actual intention, but I believe the purpose it takes so much longer for the battle stations fighters at least to respond to that, because I'm actually firing at something that's further away from it, so it's a little more likely torpedoes are going to hit, even if it is only a Dauntless. As he adjusts for the attack there, as may apparent, these torpedoes are going to hit hard. I lose a whopping, 300, 250 health from that, so this is where the adjustments start to come in some. Unfortunately, even my Widowmaker is not safe from that onslaught. It still survives. It still survives as I make my maneuvers, and this is the first adaptation. I told you before about being able to mitigate the torpedoes. Since he's content on the tighter spread, I could just straight up dodge it to an extent, so that's what I do with the Retribution. Dauntless and my tire on the right are going to go through the minefield, try and put a little bit of pressure on the side. It may not be the smartest idea with how easily I could get rushed down, so I kind of take it slow and steady, but still not the very ideal. I just want to try and hit from an awkward angle a little bit. I'm not trying to commit to an engagement with those two, because after all, they're the weakest part of my fleet there, especially now they're getting identified. And bombers coming out, and this is where I decide to turn on a round. A little bit tenuous, perhaps, to try and go through the mines, but the Dauntless is like the easiest one to go through this minefield anyway, because of its smaller stature and profile. So I get out of the space station range and just run out of the torpedoes, or the bombers rather. And speaking of torpedoes, I was contemplating just a high energy turning, but worried about it probably knocking me off course into a mine there a little bit. Because I'm not quite familiar and haven't really been paying attention on how the high energy turn actually displaced me, because it does move you a tiny bit when you do that. Let's ignore the fact that I just destroyed my own Widowmaker, but not a huge issue just yet. I do have the Cobra to try and spot a little bit. I do take more evasive maneuvers, trying to dodge these torpedoes, get a bit of a better feel for them. Especially since, these are the slower type of torpedoes. He did not upgrade his short burn, if I understand. And this is a little bit valuable info as well. Come and look at this replay here. is that he autocast all his bombers onto the Cobra, so if I were in a good position to just charge in there, that would be a lot of damage potential he's missing out on. That is a lot of damage potential he's missing out on, so I'm taking notes at this point. I'm basically just probing him at this point because it's a really awkward situation to do a reliable push. Because I'm still not comfortable with the battle station's firepower itself. But, as I said, I am dodging torpedoes relatively well. I have a good sort of tight formation to help deal with these bombers, especially since they're coming in sporadically now. So I'm actually going to have point defense fire on every single squadron if this keeps up. So, I am mitigating his damage really well. It's just the initial salvo that the Retribution took that is really painful and still felt right now, even as repairs are underway. So, we start getting closer, slow and steady. I am in a tight formation, of course, for the torpedoes, as I mentioned, so this is probably not the best firing position for me there. This is probably like the sweet spot, whereas I have the least time to actually take evasive maneuvers. And as much as I would love his own Cobra to help me with the torpedo defense, it did not work out. It unfortunately did not work out, and the bombers are coming on in for the Tyrant right now. I get ready for my own torpedo assault there. And they're immediately destroyed. I probably should have waited till the bombers went down, because the bombers were effective in that regard, stopping that assault. They were damn effective, but I now have Fission there. I'm starting my focus fire on the Mars. Or not the Mars, but one of his dictators that's already hindered. It's going to be a slow process with the brace for impact, but after the brace for impact comes down, the damages start going to add up. It's just a matter at this point of mitigating the damage I can. Because the Retribution begins to take evasive maneuvers, the Tyrant is going to dodge effectively. I said the Retribution is taking evasive maneuvers. Thank you! Thank you past me for listening to myself from the future. Because right now, it kind of needs it. As bombers are going in, it's not nearly as much damage as it could have been, considering how fearsome that salvo was, but we did well as far as mitigating that, even at such a close proximity. So, again, I'm still trying to weather the storm, do what damage I can. I would argue, in retrospect, I probably could have focused my efforts on the battle station there. I am in a really damn good position to actually focus on the battle station now that I'm looking at it. But I already won the first round. I'm kind of like with the mindset that I had before as I try frantically again to dodge these torpedoes. It does mess up my turn attempt, as I thought I re-established the higher energy turn of this one dictator, so it takes more damage than it probably needed to, unfortunately. But brace for impact is down for one dictator. My fire is getting a little obscured because of the frantic dancing around. But any damage I can do is very likely to stick this time now, without the 95 resistance with the brace for impact. But again, it comes down to I probably could have had a lot more easier time attacking the battle station, because look how out of position he is right now if I were to go for that aggressively. I could have done like he did a little bit, where he charged in a kamikaze sense. The Retribution may not have been in the best position to do that as aggressively as I would like, especially now that my Tyrant is starting to get a little bit aware from all this onslaught. But again, I'm in like the perfect sweet spot for these torpedoes a little bit, because I am going to have the least time to actually dodge these where he can concentrate his fire effectively. So, as I said though, this is a little bit of a learning experience. So I'm basically trying to probe and understand what my options are, and this is where I come up with how I am going to approach the third match. I decide right here to concede this. I'm just going to conserve my two Tyrants, warp them out, and just, if possible, have this Retribution commit suicide and hopefully heavily damage this Tyrant. That's the idea, but it does not happen, unfortunately, as much as I would like it to. It is getting close, and even with the Retribution, if the Retribution actually exploded there, it probably would have been heavily damaged. And that would have actually played a huge part in the last match, because he would only have two carrier ships, two carrier cruisers, more precisely, to even use for the next match, if this is the playstyle he's going for. And he has no Marses to kind of supplement them, so this is where I can concoct my strategy for the next match. I'm going to go in, I'm playing on a super aggressive style here. I'm going to be forsaking the silent attempt. I'm going to be boosting constantly, dodging his torpedoes to the best of my ability, and getting there aggressively. It's not going to be as slow as with the Ork attempts, but I'm confident this could work. Even though I probably still failed to look at his upgrades there, because he actually has, was it the powered spur, whatever that upgrade is that increases his ramming damage on those dictators, which again points out how valuable, heavily damaging that one dictator could have been for me in this matchup. But as it stands, we are fighting 3 dictators and 2 dauntlesses for this battle. He forsakes the Widowmakers entirely, and I go in with the 2 overlords, the tyrants, and this may be a bit questionable. Even at the time of this match, I'm kind of second guessing taking the dictator. It's more like a security net, because I don't know how effectively this is going to go. Because even with me going to, ideally, what I'm doing is side strafing around the torpedoes to the best of my ability, the dictator will help deal with any torpedoes that I may not be able to shoot at, ideally. I'm going to have to look at the dictator carefully in this match to see if it actually does that or not. But I have an idea. I think I'm confident in it. It just remains to be seen if I can weather the storm. That's the ultimate story. That is the ultimate story there, because with him fielding 3 dictators, he has no real close-range power. He has no close-range power. He's relying heavily on his long range and damage potential, because if I'm in close, my carriers, my cruisers rather, can all defend each other by shooting down the bombers with their point defense, and it makes it really difficult for him to focus his torpedoes in such a chaotic mess, if the Ork battle was any indication. So, my fleet's out. It probably is questionable having a Widowmaker if I'm going to do such an aggressive play, but I like to be able to have some lance fire to help complement and soften them up a little bit. Because after all, if the shields are already down when I finally get in my aggressive move, then that's actually going to pay. That's going to be really damn helpful and maximize my armor-piercing rounds effectiveness. As I said before, what my strategy is, I'm just going in headlong, side strafing to mitigate the torpedo damage. And I'm trying to pay attention if he did get the torpedo speed increase. Kind of hard to do that there in the middle of this frantic rush, but I'm going to have to really pay attention to that. I think they're actually speed increase. I'm not sure. I'm really uncertain. Because I'm so used with the high-speed torpedoes, the short-burn torpedoes, I probably don't even recognize them. I'm just assuming Imperial Navy are using them at this point, because it makes them so much more accurate. And, okay, so we dealt with the first torpedo wave quite well, blocking one, taking one on the Overlord, but the second wave's going to be an easy dodge, it looks like, as he tries to anticipate me more going to the right, it looks like, so it makes an easy enough attempt to dodge the second time around. The main thing at this point is to try to be unpredictable. If he shoots the torpedoes when I'm already facing the left, then I'm going to have possibly a hard time dodging, or hell, it's arguable I might be able to juke him a little bit easier because of my high energy turn. It's going to cost so much more combustion gauge, but maybe I could juke him a lot more because it's probably easier to change my heading now that I think of it than actually boosting a certain direction to throw off his torpedoes, as there's a little bit of stagger in these torpedoes anyway. So we dodge the dictators easily enough. We take fairly negligible damage of the dauntlesses, and we're almost within striking range. It's about time to make my move, but there's one more torpedo wave I'm going to have to get through. And this is where I decide to commit. I'm going straight on through there. We're going to have ourselves a bit of a repeat. And no, I'm not doing the silent commentary this time. That's going to get boring really quickly if I were to go that route. But even with the 3 dictators, the torpedoes have bore some fruit. He actually took more damage than I did, despite my frantic formations and him having defensive fighters. So this looks well for me. I do pop my brace for impacts really early, mind you, but it was to help deal with the torpedoes as we get on in aggressively. And I do check in the middle of this fight, he does again have the powered rams. I never did check if he had the high yield or short burn torpedoes though. So, We are in engagement, we're in point blank range, and this is supposed to suit well for me there. The problem is being able to focus the damage ideally. That's going to be the moral of the story, trying to get as much focus damage as I can, trying to mitigate what rams I can, at least frontal rams, so at least that way his damage is not as effective as it could be. Because really, that's the only real damage he has in such close engagements. With all these cruisers in tight formation, they're all shooting down his bombers relatively well. It's when I get spread out I might have concern though. And all his fighters are also dying for those lovely torpedo hits that we just saw right there. He didn't mitigate a ton of it though still, despite my best attempts to get a massive broadside in. Nonetheless, shields are coming up there because my shields are going to be incredibly resilient for this battle, because he has almost no regular macro batteries aside for dauntlesses there, so it's good to help use them to mitigate a lot of his regular damage, the little bit he has. As we get the first casualty, we get the first kill. His other ones are slowly going to follow, especially with a bunch of fires on the middle one there. That's going to burn. And one good torpedo hit will kill that dictator down below. It's definitely tense, I won't lie. But it looks like I'm in the better end of things, especially as ships are exploding on the poor dauntlesses there. We got void explosions everywhere, hitting everything, so it's hard to really say who's got the better exchange considering the situation. But let's see, it's both the tyrants are about, or dictators are about to die. We got insubordinations on everything. That was the most random torpedo there, but I think it was all tabbing through quickly to, or just tabbing through to try and get the one overlord to shoot. Or actually, no, that's my overlord. Never mind. I thought that was the dictator first, because the dictator's in back. It is now getting really close, but his cruiser has no health left to it. One more broadside. As I commit to mutiny, just immediately destroys the final dictator. Now is to clean up our little friend here, who has no extra ramming damage, so it's really all he has is his torpedoes, and that's going to do little good here after he just used them, so there's a nice 40-second window where he can't do crap pretty much, unless he gets a really damn lucky broadside. But with the bombers doing their thing, the fires enacted, this is over. This is over. It was a little bit tense. I don't know how I could have done that better if I should have seriously took evasive maneuvers on that point-blank range torpedo. Really hard to judge. And again, it comes down to the question, was my dictator useful in that engagement, or should I have gone with our tyrant for more armor-piercing rounds? Maximize the raw damage potential I could have, especially if I could focus fire them. Really hard to say, honestly. I feel like the dictator may not have been as useful as I thought it would be, at least stopping the torpedoes, but it probably was damn good at shooting down any of the bombers he may have sent at me going in when I did my final charge. If nothing else, it probably was effective in that regard, since I probably wouldn't have had time to maximize my point defense with that aggressive play. But onward to the next match.